Hi, I'm Jane Reardon at the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism. Welcome to Reimagining Law. In this video series, we're exploring with legal professionals how they can change the delivery of legal services to better meet the needs of today's consumers. Today, I'm joined by Moses Suarez, a partner at SmithAmundsen and president of LAGBAC. Welcome to the show, Moses.
It's a pleasure to be on.
Moses, you're from South Texas. You went to law school in Indiana. Could you share a little bit about why you decided to practice here in Chicago?
Sure. I think the primary reason I chose to stay in the Chicago area, in Chicago, was the welcoming atmosphere for LGBTQ persons. And, being from Texas, it's not, at least certainly 10, 15 years ago, wasn't as easy to come out professionally, and I felt a lot more welcomed and a sense that I could thrive professionally in Chicago. So that was really the primary reason for staying.
The U.S. Supreme Court recently ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act protected transgender and sexual orientation under its provisions. What does that mean for the LGBTQ plus community, the legal community here in Chicago particularly?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that definitely means some more peace and security for the LGBT community employees that are working. In Chicago and in Illinois, there are protections that were available prior to the Title VII decision, but the U.S. is a pretty big country, and there are LGBTQ people all over this country. Title VII does now protect LGBTQ persons who are working in small rural communities and in big metropolitan cities like Chicago.
Following the death of George Floyd, LAGBAC issued a statement of solidarity saying it stands behind the Black community and the peaceful protests and those grieving. It also went on to say that LGBTQ plus rights were not gained quickly over time and not by waiting for your turn, so to speak. Actually, I think that's exactly what you said on the website. Can you speak a little bit more about the role of activism and obtaining rights?
Sure. I think that you got to speak up to be heard. And, I'm a relatively young person. I'm just shy of 40. But in my short amount of time, the country has really advanced itself with acceptance of LGBTQ persons. I think we've gone to not seeing LGBTQ persons on television and movies to being more prominent or seeing them more often in television. I certainly know my own family has come around to accept it a lot more recently than 10, 15 years ago. So we have to speak up. And I think that LAGBAC coming out, providing a statement of solidarity for the Black Lives Movement, the Black Trans Lives Movement, is significant because not only was George Floyd affected by violence by police, but we've had other persons of color who have been affected, including trans persons of color, like Tony McDade, a trans man who was killed by police recently. In fact, it was, I think, a few days after George Floyd. So I think your question about the statement that LAGBAC put out about not quietly waiting for our turn to obtain equal rights has been about being vocal, about going to our legislatures, about educating the legal community. We've seen over a long period of time. I remember when I was still in grade school, President Clinton and the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in the military. in the early 2000s, the Defense of Marriage Act and what was happening there and family values. When I was in law school, the Prop 8 law in California, that was a real shocker when the right to marry was revoked. And, recently the repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act, legalization of same-sex marriage, and just, was it last week, Title VII, protections for LGBTQ persons by the Supreme Court. This is an example of activism, about speaking out. Sometimes it's going to lobbying our legislators. Sometimes it's taking a position in legal cases. And sometimes it's also going out into the street and protesting.
Moses, you're president of LAGBAC. Could you share some of the initiatives that the organization is working on this year?
Yes. So we've got quite a bit of programming that we do throughout the year. We do a lot of CLE programming on LGBTQ issues. Just last week, on the 18th of June, we had a CLE on the Bostock decision and its implications on Title VII. I think one of the big initiatives that we engage in that I'm very proud of is our Lawyers for Diversity scholarship program. Through our foundation, we give close to $40,000 in scholarships for law students every year. This is our 16th year doing it, and it allows LGBTQ law students to intern at public interest organizations or LGBTQ HIV/AIDS organizations where they would otherwise be unpaid, and we're able to offset some of those costs of living that law students undertake. We also do, we have a mentoring program where we pair our law students with our attorneys with law students. And we also have some attorney mentor pairs. Really, I'll leave that up to the actual paired mentors to decide what they want to do as part of that mentorship relationship. But I think when I've served as a mentor, the biggest questions that come up are, how do I come out in the legal profession and during interviews? That's a pretty prevalent topic that I've had to address. And then we've got our diversity committee, our nominations committee. We're very much interested in diversifying LAGBAC. We're an organization of 300 to 400 members, and we do have a large male white percentage of our membership, and we really want to increase the image of our organization to include more persons of color and transgender persons, gender nonconforming people in our organization, by encouraging them to both run for office as well as through the nominations and appointment process for our board.
That's great. And you shared with me before, LAGBAC stands for lesbian and gay.
Oh, yeah.
And you want to expand the name to signify the more inclusive nature of the organization, right?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. That's one of my big priorities as president of LAGBAC, has been to listen, take an opportunity to solicit input from our members, from our board, and consider renaming the organization so that we're more inclusive. Historically, since the inception of LAGBAC, in the 80s, the name was Lesbian and Gay Bar Association of Chicago. And it doesn't include bisexual, it doesn't include transgender and queer people. So we're thinking, or we're working on, and I anticipate that before the end of the year, our name will likely stay as LAGBAC because of the name ID. But we're going to drop the long form name, and we're going to add Chicago's LGBTQ plus Bar Association, or something to that effect. I think it's very important, if we're going to be inclusive, that our name reflect that.
Absolutely. Moses, is the legal profession doing enough, in your opinion, to support the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think it depends a lot on what are we talking about? Are we talking about Chicago? Are we talking about the state of Illinois? Are we talking about nationally? I think that the legal profession is doing a good job of it here in the Chicagoland area, in Cook County, generally. Statewide, I would say that there's a lot of work to be done. Our judiciary needs to reflect the face of the Illinois community. And, there are LGBTQ people outside of Chicagoland. And I think that our judges should be supported in Southern Illinois and every part of the state to serve. There should be LGBTQ judges serving all over the state, and also in leadership positions. Even here in Cook County, I think it would be great to see our LGBTQ judges serving in leadership positions, in the administrative positions of the courts. And then I think in terms of diversity, training, and sensitivity, there is definitely room for improvement in Cook County as well as statewide. I think when you have litigants who are appearing before the courts, there can be a disconnect between the bench and those litigants who are LGBTQ persons. How does a judge interface or communicate with a transgender person when they're struggling on their appearance or their name? So we need some more diversity sensitivity training.
Well, thank you, Moses Suarez, for joining me today on Reimagining Law. And thank you, folks, for watching this video. Please like and share it, and subscribe to our news channel for information about upcoming episodes. Information about staying connected with the Commission on Professionalism can be found in the notes below. Thanks for watching, and be well.